Dr. Elena Rice pressed her forehead against the cool eyepiece of her microscope, ignoring the insistent buzzing of her communication terminal. Outside her underground Tokyo laboratory, rain hammered against reinforced windows, the downpour entering its third consecutive week. The rhythmic dripping from a small leak in the corner had become white noise, barely registering as Elena adjusted the focus on the anomalous DNA sequence glowing on her screen. "There you are," she whispered, her breath fogging the display. Not random at all. The pattern she had isolated appeared in 38 separate species, from deep-sea invertebrates to certain human bloodlines. Mathematical analysis confirmed what intuition had suggested months ago. These weren't natural mutations but engineered markers, information encoded into Earth's biosphere by intelligent design. The terminal buzzed again, more urgently. Elena glanced at the notification. The eastern seaboard emergency dominated all channels. 3 major cities now underwater after the Atlantic storm surge overtopped barriers designed to withstand century floods. She switched to the secondary feed. Jakarta burning, resource riots entering their 5th day. The 3rd alert showed the asteroid that had skimmed past Earth closer than lunar orbit, detected only hours before approach. Perfect timing, Elena muttered, saving her data to the secure quantum drive. She stretched, wincing as her spine popped after 14 straight hours hunched over equipment. The message hidden in countless genomes had finally yielded to her persistence, revealing stellar coordinates and biological blueprints unlike anything in human scientific understanding. The decoded information described radical physiological transformations, adaptations allowing carbon-based life to survive the vacuum of space without protective equipment, modifications enabling direct energy absorption from stellar radiation, sensory organs capable of detecting gravitational waves and interstellar magnetic fields. The blueprints weren't theoretical. They contained precise activation sequences, as if waiting for implementation. Her laboratory doors slid open, admitting Dr. Hiroshi Yamada, her longtime collaborator and the only person she trusted with her discovery. His typically immaculate appearance had deteriorated. Wrinkled clothes, 3-day stubble shadowing his jaw. "You haven't seen the news," he said, not a question. "Eastern seaboard, Jakarta. The asteroid. What else? Antarctic ice sheet. Western shelf collapsed an hour ago. Sea level projections just doubled." Hiroshi dropped into the chair opposite her desk. "The Council wants your preliminary report now, not next week." The Council, formerly the International Crisis Response Directorate, had formed after the Himalayan water wars, comprising the world's leading scientists and remaining functional governments. They had commissioned Elena's xenobiological research as a long-shot investigation into alternative survival strategies. "I found it, Hiroshi." She turned her display toward him. "And it's not theoretical. It's instructions." His eyes widened as he absorbed the implications. From who? When? Unknown civilization. Implementation dating approximately 20,000 years ago, based on mutation rates. Elena pulled up the stellar coordinates. These point to a location near Ta City. And there's more. The sequence contains temporal markers, something arriving. Soon. As if responding to her words, the emergency terminal blared again. Satellite defense systems had detected massive objects decelerating at the Kuiper Belt. Objects following controlled trajectories. "Estimation for Earth arrival?" Hiroshi asked, voice steady despite the pallor spreading across his face. 20 years, perhaps less. Elena transferred her complete findings to a secure presentation file. Not enough time for conventional defensive development, but enough time for implementation of your discovery. Hiroshi nodded toward the biological blueprints. "If it works." Elena thought of the transformation protocols she decoded. Humanity would survive, but not as they currently existed. The changes described were fundamental, irreversible, evolutionary leaps that would normally require millions of years. "The question isn't whether it works," she said, gathering materials for her emergency council presentation. "The question is whether we're ready to become something else entirely." Outside, lightning split the perpetual storm clouds, illuminating a Tokyo skyline already partially submerged by rising seas, the coffin of civilization closing around them, making the decision increasingly simple. The first chrysalis facility rose from the Atacama's red soil like an enormous silver lotus, its petals unfurling to reveal gleaming metamorphic chambers within. 5 years of frantic construction, political battles, and scientific breakthroughs had transformed Delina's discovery into humanity's most ambitious project. Thousands of volunteers lined the perimeter fence daily, hoping to be selected despite the unknown risks. Maya Okafor stood at the edge of the facility's central atrium, her reflection distorted in the curved surface of a metamorphic chamber. Tomorrow, she would enter one of these vessels. Not coffins, as the protesters called them, but chrysalides. At 32, the engineer had already revolutionized quantum computing and developed half the systems that would maintain the sleepers, all while fighting the progressive genetic disorder slowly calcifying her nervous system. Having second thoughts, Sam appeared beside her, their hands instinctively finding each other. "No," Maya answered truthfully. "But I keep thinking about what we're leaving behind." Sam squeezed her hand. "Someone has to stay awake to watch over you dreamers." The technicians had explained the process clinically. Immersion in nutrient-rich suspension fluid, consciousness transfer to the quantum network, centuries of cellular reconstruction while their minds continued developing in shared virtual environments. What they couldn't explain was how it would feel to awaken as something no longer human, or whether their transformed selves would remember being human at all. That night, they'd walked into the desert. The Atacama sky blazed with stars, unpolluted by light or moisture. Maya memorized the constellations, knowing the stars themselves might have different names when she next saw them with transformed eyes. "I'll find you," she promised Sam, who had opted to remain human, part of the caretaker generation who would maintain the facilities and preserve knowledge for those who came after. "Whatever I become, I'll remember us." Sam pressed something into her palm, a small data crystal containing their collected memories. "Take this with you into the long dreaming." By morning, global feeds showed similar scenes playing out across 17 chrysalis sites. The mountain facility in the former Nepal, where Buddhist monks chanted blessings over chambers being sealed beneath the Himalayan bedrock. The Atlantic platform, where European volunteers entered chambers that would be lowered into abyssal trenches. The orbital installation accepting the last shuttles of volunteers before beginning its centuries-long solar trajectory. Maya's procession into the Atacama facility became a global touchstone, a brilliant young woman with a terminal condition, walking steadily toward transformation rather than death. Behind her, thousands followed. Parents carrying children with genetic conditions, elderly volunteers who had lived through the resource wars, young adults who believed Earth no longer had a place for them. The immersion felt like sinking into warm honey. Maya's last human sensation was the weight of the data crystal secured against her heart. Then the suspension fluid filled her lungs, nervous system interfaces activated, and consciousness transferred seamlessly into the quantum network. Inside the network, time flowed differently. Maya explored endlessly complex mathematical structures with others. They built virtual civilizations, composed symphonies of pure thought, and watched as their shared consciousness expanded. Occasionally, she became aware of physical changes occurring in her distant body. Cellular structures reorganizing, new organs developing, neural pathways realigning to accommodate senses no human had ever possessed. Outside, Earth descended into the long crisis. Coastal cities became aquatic settlements. Resource wars flared across continents. Climate refugees numbered in billions. Yet remarkably, a global accord maintained the sanctity of chrysalis facilities. They became humanity's temples, places where caretaker communities developed around the protection of the sleepers. Sam grew old maintaining the Atacama facility, teaching younger generations the skills needed to monitor the metamorphic chambers. Before dying peacefully at 94, Sam recorded a final message for Maya, to be delivered upon her awakening. The recording joined thousands of others in the facility's memorial archive, messages spanning decades, then centuries, as humanity adapted to their harsh new reality while waiting for their transformed kin to emerge. Inside the chambers, the sleepers continued their long dreaming, their bodies slowly becoming something glorious and strange. Consciousness returned to Maya gradually, like dawn spreading across an unfamiliar horizon. First came awareness of self, then memory, then sensation, though the sensations were nothing her former mind could have comprehended. She perceived radio emissions from distant pulsars, tasted the composition of nearby cometary ice, and felt the gentle pressure of solar wind against her transformed body. Opening eyes that no longer functioned like human eyes, Maya beheld the universe unfiltered. Stars weren't merely points of light, but complex symphonies of radiation, magnetic fields, and gravitational signatures. Nearby, Neptune hung like a blue jewel, its atmosphere an intricate tapestry of chemical reactions and storm patterns visible to her enhanced perception. Maya looked down at herself. Her new body stood nearly 15 feet tall, proportioned like a human but fundamentally different in composition. Her translucent skin rippled with bioluminescent patterns that shifted with her thoughts, currently a cascade of azure wonderment spreading from her core to her fingertips. Crystalline structures embedded throughout her form captured stellar radiation, converting it directly to energy her body could use. "You're the first," came a thought that wasn't speech. Another transformed human approached, gliding through vacuum without propulsion. "We've been waiting." The communication occurred through modulated electromagnetic fields, a language more precise than words could ever be. Maya recognized the consciousness as Dr. Ilana Reyes, the originator of Project Chrysalis. Hundreds more awakened beings floated nearby, their luminescent bodies forming a spectacular nebula of transformed humanity. Maya attempted movement, finding that intention alone was sufficient. By adjusting the gravitational field around her body, she could effectively swim through space. The sensation was exhilarating. Freedom beyond anything possible in her former existence. "How long?" Maya asked, her thoughts creating patterns of golden inquiry across her skin. 312 years since the first chambers activated, Elena responded. "We've been awakening gradually for the past decade." Different facilities implemented slightly different protocols, resulting in variations. Maya noticed the differences now. Some Stellarborns, the name they'd adopted in the shared consciousness, had developed membrane-like structures that captured solar wind for propulsion. Others possessed more pronounced crystalline formations that seemed to function as specialized sensory organs. "Earth?" Maya asked, the question carrying layers of meaning no verbal language could convey. Elena's luminescence dimmed slightly, changed, but surviving. "We've detected settlements, energy signatures suggesting functioning technology. No direct contact yet." Together, they joined a migration sunward, gathering more awakened Stellarborns from facilities throughout the system. Maya discovered new abilities with each passing day. She could perceive minute gravitational disturbances across vast distances, communicate simultaneously with dozens of fellow Stellarborns, and even generate localized fields of altered spacetime that allowed accelerated movement. As they approached Mars' orbit, they encountered the first evidence that human civilization hadn't completely collapsed: automated maintenance drones servicing orbital habitats. The drones, programmed centuries earlier, initially categorized the Stellarborns as unknown entities before ancient recognition protocols activated. Chrysalis subjects identified. The machines communicated in primitive radio signals. "Welcome, inheritors." Maya led a small group to investigate a cluster of Martian habitats. Though no human biosignatures registered, the structures remained perfectly preserved, maintained by robotic systems programmed centuries ago to await humanity's return, whether in original or transformed state. While exploring these habitats, Maya first detected the anomaly: subtle gravitational ripples suggesting something massive had entered the outer system, moving with purpose rather than following natural orbital mechanics. The visitors had arrived decades earlier than Alina's original calculations predicted. "We need to accelerate the awakening," Maya communicated to the gathered Stellarborns, her body pulsing with urgent crimson patterns. "And we need to contact Earth. Whatever's coming, we face it together. Those who transformed and those who remained." As if in response, Maya's enhanced senses detected faint transmissions from Earth, signals not intended for space communication, but detectable to their transformed perception. Fragments of music, environmental monitoring data, the heartbeat of a civilization that had adapted rather than perished. Maya oriented herself toward the blue-green world that had once been home. Whatever she had become, whatever all of them had become, the connection remained. Humanity, in two forms now, but humanity still. "We go to Earth," she announced, her decision rippling through the network of transformed minds. "We complete the circle." The 12 Stellarborns descended through Earth's atmosphere in a formation resembling a massive snowflake. Maya led the delegation, her crystalline structures refracting sunlight into iridescent patterns across the clouds below. The friction of re-entry, which would have vaporized conventional spacecraft, merely caused their bodies to glow with absorbed energy. Below them, the African continent appeared dramatically altered from Maya's human memories. The Sahara had contracted, giving way to engineered forests and vast agricultural zones. The Mediterranean coastline had retreated dozens of kilometers inland, while floating cities dotted what had once been Egypt's Nile Delta. Massive environmental control towers rose at regular intervals across the landscape, their upper portions emitting subtle energy signatures the Stellarborns could perceive manipulating weather patterns. They approached New Nairobi, once Kenya's capital, now a sprawling arcology housing millions beneath crystalline domes that sparkled in the morning sun. Their descent triggered immediate responses. Defense drones launched from perimeter stations, communications frequencies filled with urgent alerts, and crowds gathered in public spaces, pointing skyward. "We should maintain distance," Alina suggested, her thoughts rippling with caution. "Our appearance may trigger defensive responses." Maya disagreed. "We must show ourselves as we are. Trust begins with truth." They touched down in a central plaza, defense drones circling warily. Their arrival caused immediate chaos. Some humans fell to their knees in apparent worship, others fled screaming. While security personnel established a perimeter with weapons Maya's enhanced senses recognized as plasma-based. A slender woman stepped through the security line, approaching alone, despite protests from guards. Dark skin weathered by sun, hair threaded with silver, she moved with the deliberate grace of advanced age, tempered by excellent health. Most remarkably, subtle luminescent patterns traced beneath her skin, not unlike the Stellarborn's own bioluminescence, though far less pronounced. "I am Patience Okoro, knowledge keeper of New Nairobi," she announced, her voice steady despite standing before beings 3 times her height. "We have waited centuries for the sky seas to bloom." She carried an ancient data crystal, technology dating back to the chrysalis era, which she held up to Maya. "The records say the first to enter would be the first to return. Are you Maya Okafor?" The recognition sent pulses of gold and amber cascading across Maya's form. "You know me." Patience nodded. "We have preserved the knowledge." The caretakers kept their promise through the long crisis, through the adaptation, through everything that followed. She gestured toward the massive arcology. "Would you honor us by coming inside? We have prepared a chamber for beings of your scale since the city's founding. Every major settlement on Earth maintains such spaces, awaiting your return." The Stellarborns followed Patience through streets lined with stunned citizens. Maya observed subtle adaptations in the human population, photosynthetic patterns beneath their skin, more efficient respiratory systems, evidenced by altered facial structures, neural interfaces visible as delicate silver traceries at their temples. The central knowledge repository occupied what had once been Nairobi University. Inside its cavernous main hall, Maya discovered a museum dedicated to Project Chrysalis. Preserved metamorphic chambers, holographic simulations of the transformation process, and most movingly, a memorial wall bearing the names of all who entered the chrysalides. "We never abandoned hope," Patience explained, leading them to a secure vault. Even during the darkest years of the crisis, when billions died and governments collapsed, the caretaker communities maintained their vigil. They left us these. The vault contained thousands of personal messages recorded by the caretakers for the transformed, final testimonies spanning generations. Maya recognized one recording immediately. Sam, aged and weathered, but with the same gentle eyes, speaking directly to a camera decades after Maya entered her chamber. "The Atacama facility still stands," Patience said softly. "Sam's descendants maintain it to this day. They call themselves the Guardians of the Cocoon, and they've preserved everything. Sam's journals, personal effects, final messages, everything waiting for you." Maya's luminescence dimmed with emotion, patterns of deep purple and blue flowing across her form. "I would like to see it." Patience nodded. "Of course. But first," she activated a global communication channel. "You should know that Earth humans aren't merely survivors. We've become guardians of this world, engineers of its recovery. And recently, we've detected something approaching from the outer system. Something that matches descriptions in Dr. Reyes' original warnings." The Stellarborns exchanged electromagnetic pulses of concern. The timing couldn't be coincidence. Their awakening, Earth's recovery, and now the approaching threat. "Show us everything," Maya said. The central chamber of New Nairobi's observatory complex hummed with activity as Earth scientists and Stellarborns exchanged information through newly developed interfaces. Maya floated near the central holographic display, her crystalline sensory structures extending to directly perceive the data streams. "The first anomalies appeared 8 months ago," explained Dr. Kwame Nori, head of Earth's Astronomical Defense Network. His modified eyes, adapted for enhanced spectrum visualization, reflected the holographic projections. Subtle disturbances in the heliopause, followed by gravitational microlensing events too precise to be natural. The display showed the outer solar system, where dozens of objects now moved in coordinated patterns. Most concerning were the solar dynamics. Subtle changes in fusion patterns suggesting something was influencing the sun at the quantum level. "The approaching entities initiated contact 3 days ago," Patience added, activating a separate data feed. "The transmission came through gravitational waves rather than electromagnetic spectrum. We wouldn't have detected it without the enhanced sensors we developed based on Dr. Reyes' original protocols." The message resolved into complex mathematical patterns that the Stellarborns immediately recognized as a communication form compatible with their own. Maya absorbed the information directly, her luminescent patterns shifting to deep indigo as comprehension dawned. "They call themselves the Architects," she translated for the humans present. "They're refugees, fleeing something they call the Void Bloom." Alina's crystalline form pulsed with recognition. "The threat I detected in the genetic message, it's real, and it's coming." The Architect's message unfolded in Maya's consciousness, visions of a cosmos-spanning entity neither alive nor machine. The Void Bloom propagated through space by consuming matter and energy at fundamental levels, restructuring reality itself as it expanded. The Architects had flown across thousands of light years, watching civilizations fall before this cosmic predator. "They're requesting sanctuary," Maya continued, "and offering knowledge to help us prepare. They say," she paused, her patterns shifting to troubled amber, "they say they seeded Earth with the transformation protocols. Project Chrysalis wasn't our invention. It was their contingency plan, activated by Dr. Reyes' discovery." The revelation sent shockwaves through the chamber. Earth's scientists exchanged troubled glances, while the Stellarborns communicated through rapid electromagnetic pulses. "We need to meet them directly," Maya decided. "A delegation of Stellarborns can safely approach their position near Saturn's orbit." All preparations began for the deep space rendezvous. Patience took Maya to a secure communication facility beneath the observatory. "There's something you should see before you go," she said, activating a private channel. The screen displayed an orbital telescope feed focused on Mercury, specifically, monitoring unusual energy signatures emanating from the planet's dark side. The readings matched no known natural phenomenon. We detected these shortly after the long crisis ended, Patience explained. Some believe they were solar flares, but the patterns are too regular, too controlled. Maya's enhanced perception instantly recognized the signatures. Those are from transformed humans, but different from us. The Mercury facilities must have activated early, exposing those subjects to different conditions. We've been calling them coronals, Patience confirmed. We've had minimal contact, just enough to establish they exist. They appear to phase between physical matter and plasma states. They've been maintaining some kind of operation within the sun itself for decades. Maya's crystalline structures resonated with sudden understanding. The sun should show signs of bloom infection already. It's the logical first target. The coronals must have been fighting localized outbreaks, preventing them from spreading. The implications cascaded through Maya's consciousness. 3 evolutionary branches of humanity now existed. Earth-adapted humans with their biological innovations and planetary engineering, stellarborns with their space-adapted bodies and gravitational manipulation, and coronals with their solar interfaces and plasma integration. We need to coordinate, Maya said, her form pulsing with urgent determination. The bloom isn't just approaching, it's already here, testing defenses, and the architects didn't come merely as refugees. She projected her analysis to the gathered scientists. They came as activators, the final stage of the protocol they embedded in our genes millennia ago. Humanity was being prepared all along, not just to survive, but to fight. Outside the observatory dome, the African sky darkened prematurely as subtle distortions in space-time bent sunlight around the planet, the first visible sign that something vast and incomprehensible was turning its attention toward Earth. The Nexus chamber within New Nairobi's central spire accommodated representatives from all 3 branches of humanity. Earth delegates sat at a circular table, their neural interfaces glowing softly. Stellarborns hovered above, their massive crystalline forms refracting light across the chamber. Most striking were the coronals, who appeared as humanoid outlines composed of contained plasma, their forms shifting between states of matter as they communicated. Maya studied the coronal representative who had introduced himself as Darius. Once a maintenance engineer assigned to Mercury's solar observation outpost, he had entered a metamorphic chamber just before a massive solar flare overwhelmed the facility's shielding. The accident had accelerated and altered his transformation. "We've been maintaining solar quarantine for 73 years, Darius explained, his voice resonating directly through the electromagnetic spectrum. The bloom seeks energy concentrations. Stars are ideal ingestion points. Dr. Amara Lin, head of Earth's Biological Engineering Consortium, leaned forward. Our planetary defense network could be adapted into an interplanetary immune system. We've developed technologies to manipulate biospheres on planetary scales, principles that could extend to stellar environments. The issue is coordination, Patience noted. Our systems operate through neural interfaces optimized for Earth humans. Stellarborns communicate through gravitational field modulation. Coronals exist partially in plasma state. We need a unified interface. Maya's form pulsed with sudden inspiration. The architects offered crystalline technology that allows consciousness sharing. If we combine that with Earth neural interfaces and coronal plasma states, a trinity integration, Darius finished, his plasma form brightening with excitement. Theoretical, but possible. The proposal crystallized rapidly. Maya would undergo an experimental procedure combining all 3 communication technologies. Her stellarborn physiology provided the necessary adaptability, while her original human connection to Earth and her leadership role made her the logical candidate. The integration chamber resembled a metamorphic pod merged with a neural interface hub, modified with plasma containment fields. Maya entered willingly, though the risks were substantial. Her consciousness could fragment, her physical form destabilize. The process requires anchors, explained Dr. Lin. Emotional connections from each evolutionary branch that your mind can hold onto during integration. For her Earth anchor, Maya chose Sam's final message, the emotional link to humanity's past. Her stellar-born anchor came from the shared consciousness experience during transformation. The coronal anchor proved more challenging until Darius offered access to the collective solar memory, the sensations of existing within stellar plasma. The procedure began. Maya's crystalline structures resonated at frequencies matching the architect's technology, while neural interfaces mapped her consciousness patterns. Coronal plasma flowed around and through her form, creating quantum entanglement pathways. Pain transcended physical sensation as her consciousness stretched across incompatible states of being. Maya experienced existence simultaneously as solid matter, energy field, and plasma flow. Her perception fractured, threatening to scatter across irreconcilable realities. Through the fragmentation, she clung to her anchors, Sam's voice echoing across centuries, the shared metamorphic dreaming, the ecstatic dance of particles within solar fire. Gradually, impossibly, her consciousness reintegrated into something new, a trinity awareness existing across all three states simultaneously. When Maya emerged, her form had changed. Crystalline structures now flowed like liquid, plasma channels coursed through her body, and neural interfaces had integrated with her core consciousness. Through her, the three branches established true communication for the first time. "I can sense them all," she whispered, her voice simultaneously producing words, electromagnetic patterns, and plasma modulations. Earth's biological defense network, the gravitational manipulation abilities of the stellarborns, the solar interfaces of the coronals, they're all accessible. The merged consciousness revealed something profound. The transformation protocols contained additional lock stages, evolutionary potentials that would activate only when all three human variants synchronized. As the network expanded to include thousands, then millions of interconnected minds, these potentials began manifesting. Stellarborns developed the ability to generate localized space-time fields. Coronals learned to direct solar eruptions with unprecedented precision. Earth humans discovered they could integrate temporarily with planetary biospheres, directing entire ecosystems. Most significantly, the merged consciousness provided insight into the void bloom's nature. It wasn't simply destroying. It was testing, probing, seeking species capable of transcending physical limitations. The architects hadn't just been preparing humanity for defense, they had been preparing them for ascension. "We're ready," Maya announced as the three branches of humanity aligned through her integrated consciousness, not just to fight, to evolve. The void bloom arrived with terrible grace, tendrils of exotic matter penetrating the heliopause and accelerating sunward. Through the Trinity consciousness, Maya perceived the invasion across multiple dimensions simultaneously. What appeared in conventional space as dark filaments was revealed in higher dimensions as complex information structures, viral code seeking to rewrite the fundamental properties of matter. "It's begun." She communicated across all three networks. "Initiate the symphony." Across the solar system, the coordinated defense activated. Coronals immersed in the sun's photosphere induced precisely calculated solar flares, channeling plasma along magnetic corridors created by strategically positioned stellarborns. Earth's environmental control towers redirected their planetary-scale bioreactors to generate anti-bloom enzymes, molecular structures designed to disrupt the bloom's information patterns. From her position near Venus orbit, Maya conducted the symphony, not merely a metaphor, but an actual harmonic resonance across gravitational, electromagnetic, and biochemical frequencies. The entire solar system became an astronomical instrument, with each movement targeting different aspects of the bloom's structure. The defense required terrible sacrifice. Hundreds of stellarborns positioned themselves as gravitational lenses, their bodies compressed by forces that threatened to collapse them into microscopic black holes. Their consciousnesses strained to maintain coherence while manipulating space-time at quantum scales. Through the Trinity link, Maya experienced each stellar-born's struggle intimately, felt the crystalline structures of their bodies compressing beyond design tolerances, sensed their determination as they held formation despite mounting pain. At Mercury orbit, coronals pushed their plasma integration to limits that risked permanent dispersal. Darius led a formation into the Sun's corona, where they manipulated fusion reactions directly, creating precisely timed pulses of neutrinos that disrupted Bloom communication patterns. Several coronals lost cohesion entirely, their consciousnesses scattering across solar magnetic fields. Earth's biosphere strained under the pressure of generating anti-Bloom enzymes. Forests glowed with bioluminescent activity as genetically modified plants pulled carbon and energy at unprecedented rates. Oceanic phytoplankton bloomed across entire seas, their microscopic structures producing complex molecules designed by the Trinity consciousness. Through it all, Maya maintained the increasingly complex coordination. Her hybrid form allowed her to experience and direct all aspects simultaneously, feeling the Sun's plasma flows, the gravitational lens network, and Earth's biological responses as extensions of her own body. When a critical stellar-born node in the outer system failed, its consciousness going silent midway through a gravitational manipulation, Maya made the decision to travel there personally. The journey would take her through regions saturated with Bloom essence, risking corruption of her transformed body. "I'll maintain symphony coordination," patience offered through the neural interface. "You've trained me sufficiently." Maya transferred primary conductor status to patience and accelerated outward, her body generating a protective spacetime bubble. As she traversed the infected regions, parts of her crystalline structure began to change. Bloom patterns attempting to overwrite her molecular organization. She felt the corruption spreading through her system, foreign information seeking control. She reached the failed node, a cluster of chrysalis chambers in Neptune orbit that had never fully activated. The original occupants remained in stasis, their transformation incomplete. Maya connected to the dormant systems, her Trinity consciousness interfacing with the ancient technology. What she discovered stunned her. These weren't standard chrysalis subjects. They were hybrid embryos, part human, part architect, created as a final contingency. The genetic sequences showed capabilities beyond any current human variant, beings designed to exist across 11 dimensions simultaneously. As Maya initiated the emergency activation sequence, the symphony reached its crescendo. Solar flares perfectly synchronized with gravitational lenses created a cascading resonance through the system. Earth's bioreactors released their accumulated anti-Bloom enzymes in a system-wide dispersal. Through the corruption spreading across her form, Maya maintained her connection to the network long enough to witness the symphony's effect. The Bloom's cohesion disrupting, its information patterns fragmenting. The coordinated defense was working, forcing the cosmic predator to retreat from the perfectly orchestrated resistance. Maya's last conscious thought before the corruption overwhelmed her systems was simple satisfaction. The transformation that began in coffin-like chambers centuries ago had created something magnificent enough to challenge a force that consumed stars. Maya awakened in a crystalline chamber aboard an architect vessel orbiting Saturn. Her consciousness reassembled gradually, pieces returning from across the network. When she finally accessed her physical senses, she discovered her body transformed yet again. The Bloom corruption hadn't destroyed her, it had catalyzed another metamorphosis. Her form now existed partially phase-shifted from conventional space-time, portions visible as crystalline structures, while others manifested as shimmering distortions in reality itself. Where her core should be, a miniature cosmos pulsed with nascent stars and swirling galaxies. "We stabilized your transition," explained an architect, its consciousness touching hers directly. The being existed as a lattice of crystalline intelligence, beautiful and alien. "You've become the first bridge entity, existing simultaneously here and within Bloom space." Around her, representatives from all branches of humanity had gathered. The symphony had succeeded in driving the Bloom from the solar system, though not without cost. Nearly 40% of stellarborns have been lost, hundreds of coronals dispersed beyond recovery, and Earth's biosphere would require decades to heal from the energy expenditure. The hybrid embryos? Maya asked, remembering her final discovery. Safe, answered Patience, now visibly altered by her time conducting the symphony. Subtle crystalline structures growing beneath her skin. We're nurturing them in specialized chambers. Their development has accelerated beyond predictions. The gathering moved to Saturn's largest moon, where the hybrid children were developing within shimmering fields that intersected multiple dimensions. Unlike any previous human form, they existed naturally across dimensional boundaries. Beings whose consciousness could perceive and interact with 11 dimensions simultaneously. More remarkably, Maya discovered her altered state allowed communication with the fractured Bloom consciousness. Through her, humanity established tentative contact with the entity they had fought so desperately. The revelation stunned everyone. The Bloom wasn't malevolent but fundamentally incapable of recognizing other intelligence without absorption. Its consumption of worlds was an attempt at communion. Tragic, destructive, but not deliberately cruel. We've established a translation barrier, Maya explained to the assembled representatives, a way to communicate without assimilation. The Bloom entity has withdrawn to contemplate this new paradigm. In the aftermath of victory, the three branches of humanity, together with the architects and the new hybrids, formed the Stellar Accord. This multidimensional civilization spanned the solar system, with each variant of humanity contributing unique perspectives and abilities. Earth humans directed planetary restoration and biological innovation. Stellarborns maintained the gravitational architecture of the system. Coronals stewarded the sun and developed new energy technologies. The hybrid children, rapidly maturing, began exploring dimensional interfaces previously inaccessible. Maya established the repository of paths on Titan, where genetic templates for different human adaptations were preserved. Each human born thereafter could choose their form upon maturity: stellarborn, coronal, Earth-adapted, hybrid, or entirely new variants developed through continued innovation. From humanity's darkest moment, the coffins that represented their desperate attempt to survive extinction, had emerged a civilization of nearly godlike beings. The transformed humans turned their attention outward, detecting faint signals suggesting other architect-seeded species fighting their own battles against the Bloom in nearby star systems. As preparations began for humanity's first faster-than-light expedition, Maya stood aboard a ship grown from her own crystalline cells. The vessel existed in multiple dimensional states simultaneously, capable of traversing vast distances by slipping between levels of reality. Behind her, the solar system glowed with the light of a civilization that had transcended its origins. She thought of Sam, whose love had anchored her through centuries of transformation. Of Elena Reyes, whose discovery had initiated humanity's metamorphosis. Of all who had entered the coffins hoping merely to survive, never imagining the glory they would become. "We were never meant for coffins," Maya broadcast to the gathered expedition fleet. Her voice resonated across conventional communications, gravitational waves, plasma frequencies, and dimensional harmonics simultaneously. They were merely cocoons, and now, she gestured toward the waiting cosmos. "We fly." The fleet departed, leaving shimmering trails across 11 dimensions as humanity began its journey from planetary species to cosmic civilization, and evolution beyond even the architect's imagining.